Rebecca Renfroe-Borneman has had a lifetime of amazing experiences with E.T.s and UFOs, including being aboard spacecraft since her early childhood. She's made presentations to UFON and other UFO groups, and her direct contact experience with E.T.s have been predominantly positive and prompted her to conduct extensive research, which she has thoroughly documented. She believes the best path going forward for humanity is for those people who have kept quiet about their experiences to share them. She joins us now. Hello, Rebecca.
Hello, Dean.
How are you today?
I'm very good, thanks. How about you?
Pretty good. Well, I was reading through the information you sent me, and I must say you've had a pretty fulfilled and interesting life. So we're going to talk about your experiences with ETs and UFOs, and I just wanted to start with, when did they actually start?
Around 7 years old.
Okay, so we mentioned a lifetime. I mean, can you give us some description of what takes place when you have personal contact?
Well, I guess I became so used to it because as a child, they would visit in two predominantly places. One behind our home here, where I grew up in Florida, and at my grandfather's home in Georgia. So I would just simply go out whenever I knew they were around. And it's easy to know when they're there because they either let you know telepathically, or you feel the magnetic pull on the skin, like a magnet to a magnet. And you go where they tell you to go and you visit. And there was always a preparation time, going into a particular dimension. I used to call it in dimension, is what I actually referred to it as. And it went from there, establishing that relationship as a child. And when I would step in with the extraterrestrials, at that time when I was little, I noticed that they would do what is familiar to us as touch and goes, where the military was there, ETs were there, you were interviewed, you were observed, you learned. It was quite a mixture. I can't say I fully understand that from my childhood, but it was just as real as anything. And my mother did talk to me about it prior to her death. And she reminded me of the encounters at the front door where they would come to take me. And she wasn't quite happy with it, but would remain there until they brought me back and put me to bed. So that's how it began. And then it just remained over a period of my entire life. And it continues to today, but not as deeply as it was growing up.
Were you ever frightened as a child when it first started to happen?
No, I was not, because they were nice.
Okay. What did they communicate to you? What kind of things did they tell you?
Well, I'll just give one as an example. They would teach you how to mathematically move space, jump off of a section of a building or a place, no matter what its height was, and you would calculate it and jump down and regulate how you would calculate your descent. And you were being observed by military and the ETs. The ETs liked me. I was extremely creative because that's been my life in the arts. So they liked me for that. But the military did not choose to have me around. That was kind of what happened. And that's one thing that there's a difference. I'm going to make a break in here because you're asking a very good question. What do you learn? What was the result of it? Your life is an expansion. You realize you're not alone in the universe. You realize that God has created an immensity of life throughout this universe, that there are multi-dimensions, and that there's a difference. Now, this is my observation and my personal opinion, that there's a difference between the angelic realm, extraterrestrial, and all of these spiritual dimensions and all the things that go in and out. Matter takes its form through the dimensions with sound and different kind of techniques. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Okay. So you talked about the military being there. Are you talking about our own military?
Yes.
So they're obviously involved in contact with ETs.
You bet.
Okay.
Yep.
What's the
Your
difference?
question. I'm sorry, I can see the look on your face.
No, it's just I was thinking it was the E.T. military, but okay.
No,
So
it's ours.
so what's the difference between the spiritual and the bio entities? How,
Oh, what a beautiful question, Dean. Did you have something else you wanted to say as you were asking the question?
no, I was moving on to that one. That the military part kind of threw me a little bit. I'm sure it's probably thrown others as well, but I just wanted to. I was interested in the difference between the spiritual and bio entities because I think that's a really good subject.
I think one of the little separation of boards that I put out there that in my observation over my life has been that an extraterrestrial, in my experience, has needed a craft. An angel does not require a craft. And an extraterrestrial has a completely different energy signature from an angelic form. Their missions are different, their expressions are different, and their ability to convey the universal language of God is quite different in my experience. So here again, I'm simply voicing my experience. I'm not talking about anybody else, because if I told you I knew all the answers, you hang up on me. If I tell you, anybody who tells you they have all the answers, hang up on them. No way, baby.
Okay.
That's a small part of the list I've seen, just those three predominant ones to share with you. Angels have a sense of presence that is so overwhelmingly peaceful and joyful. They can come out of their light form and form into frame like humans and take on a form. And I know that there are similarities between what the extraterrestrial realm can do, but those are just a few of the things I've noticed.
Yep.
On the
Okay.
list I sent you.
Were they working together? Do they cross paths with each other?
Not that I've seen, but I will relate one experience. I know it's going to sound religious, but I'm going to relate it anyway.
No, go ahead.
Okay, all right. My contact throughout my life was a very tall, they're between 6 to 8 feet tall. I call them the golden ones. They are closer to what you would refer to, if you could see the drawing, as a extra large gray, because of the way it was formed, but the skin was golden and beautiful. And my contact, I'll just speak it out, had wanted me to attend a particular conference, an alliance conference of some kind, which I was not familiar with or understood it until recently. That as a result, I believe his life was taken and killed. He was given an injection with what we have the equivalent of what we call cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And he came to see me prior to his passing and told me not to cry, and that he was grateful for the creativity and the experience of learning that he had observed and gained from interaction with me throughout his life. And this was 2016, approximately 3:30 in the afternoon at the home where I lived. I would get home from school. I would always get ready to take a nap, and he shows up. And of course, I could see that he was completely, how do I put it? He looked very much like a dried up elephant.
Wow.
That's how the body looked. And so I started crying immediately, knowing something was wrong. And he said, I know who Jesus Christ is. I know where I'm going. And thank you. And a quantum window opened on the side of my wall, and he stepped through it. I call it a quantum window because I really have no other reference to it but to call it that. That seems to be a good phrase after all my study within science and reading, to try to catch up to things I am not capable of explaining.
Okay.
Does that make any sense, Steve?
Yeah, that made a lot of sense. But I wanted to ask you, unlike most people, you decided to conduct your own related research on the direct encounters with E.T.s. So, I mean, you've mentioned a couple of things. What other findings did you come up with?
Well, over my life, it would be sometimes at an unusual time, they would show up, sometimes to teach me something. You're oftentimes shown the future, just like an angelic or a prophetic word can be given. let's see. I'm trying to better understand how to share that with you. Can you be a little more specific so that I can try and draw up something to give you a better...
Yeah, I guess just some of the main findings of your research. Did you understand why you were chosen in particular?
I try not to think about it as chosen, because then it makes it sound like I'm something special when there are thousands and millions like me.
Mm-hmm.
I chose to outline it because that's the planning side of me. I like to outline things. I like to plan things. Even though I'm in the arts and I express myself, being a songwriter, you have to organize your thoughts, and being a teacher, you have to create curriculum. So it seemed to make sense to me to just put it all in line and write up a timeline and keep all that going. What have I learned? That you have to be a little more open-minded, and you have to realize that the universe is so much bigger than we think, and that science is not what we think, that physics is not what we think,
Mm-hmm.
that tones and atmospheres and color and geometric design, all of these things matter, that the material structure of something can go in and out due to all of these other things that are with it. And that traveling involves a consciousness level that we have just begun to explore more in our Western world, which exists in the Eastern cultures a lot far deeper, and that we have to be able to be open to that. I've learned that we have to step outside of ourselves and create, keeping God in a box. I'm a Christian who believes in Jesus Christ as Savior, and I believe in the Holy Spirit. But if I was sharing this with a group of Christians who were very conservative, or who believed that there were no angels and nothing existed outside of this planet, I'm a nutcase to them. To the conservative, I'm too liberal. To the liberal, I'm too conservative. And
Yep.
and many of us get meshed somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
I hope I came to answering your. There's so much to share. Each story is so individual.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken so far with a couple of people that have had the same experiences, and just trying to wrap my head around the spiritual consciousness, exo-consciousness level. And I mean, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I think I'm really understanding it now. So, and that was going to be my next question. You said there were thousands of others like you. But I would imagine most of those keep pretty quiet about their experiences, but you'd like them to come forward.
Yes, I think we all, if it's possible for all of us to step forward even more, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here with you, is to try to share my experience, and hopefully that will help someone else to feel better. Because now, since 2016, here in America, more information has been released. And the government, or the Navy, I should say specifically, has allowed the pilots now to report more. We have people speaking out now who have never spoken before, who are famous and can reach a far wider audience than anything I could even think of. So, and you're doing your part. Look at you, Dean.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you asked me a question. I want to follow up. It just crossed my mind, Dean.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I guess the more people that come forward and relate their experiences, I guess the more the skeptics have got less to, be skeptical about, because thousands or millions of people can't be wrong.
Well, I think if people were shown the information, who are still in the dark, or who have never researched anything at all, or never had an encounter, never seen anything, never even been to a movie, which have been showing many, many truthful things within the last 10 years, especially in the movies, that we don't expect it. How can they? And so we have to be kind to them, and yet at the same time, give as much material as possible, and give them time to put it in their heads and help to change the paradigm and come forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess the issue with people coming forward, though, is I guess would be the ridicule. I mean, is there like a safe environment that someone that's been holding something in for so long and wants to talk about it can go to, and without having to basically go public?
Oh, there are so many of them. There's the Camelot. There's UFORC, MUFON. There's so many organizations that you can report to, people to speak to, conferences to attend, and there's videos out now. And why even Tucker Carlson has had on Nick Pope and several other military and Elizondo. We have a UFO con that's coming this Saturday in Orlando for us here in Florida. And all of us are able to speak. We just go to the organizations that will allow us to do so. Dean, you asked, that's another good question, because it all depends on what you know, what you've been involved with, and how much you're willing to sacrifice.
Right.
According to how and when you can speak out and who you can speak to. Even I, in my own speaking engagements, I've been told sometimes there's certain things someone has asked me not to talk about. And out of respect for them, I have agreed to do so and withhold that. So all of us know people who, coming out of the military, even now, are coming out of, let's say you've come out of the My Labs, or you've come out of the underground situation where you've worked with reptilian species. Many of them, why would they want to speak if they're going to risk something and be physically hurt or injured? But there are people, they know where to go. They do. And
the actual craft themselves, I understand you've studied them closely. Can you tell us a little bit about their makeup, their propulsion systems?
The outline I sent you was just a list. I didn't send you the pictures. I'm really familiar with just these round ones, and I know that one of the closest accurate pictures I've seen was Bob Lazar's picture that he has drawn out of Area 51. But when I was shown an energy component, or I was shown how something works, it's been quite different from what I've seen from a lot of drawings. And I do have those in a PowerPoint. I did not send that to you, so it's very hard for me since I don't have all of my drawings with you.
No, that's fine.
Here to show you. But I can just go through that list. The round ones that I have observed have had energy components within that are intelligent themselves, as if the dark matter, which was at the top section, and then the gel that was in the center, contained the components that were, and I will use a movie, in the movie Arrival. Beautiful actress that stands there in front with the cephalopods, or what is the proper name of, how do you pronounce those aquatic? My husband's not in here, so he knows the correct name. And she's standing in front of this huge aquarium-like picture, and I'm going, my goodness, it looks like the craft I was in. And they had moving components, light components that were intelligent, moving within the gel, acting in a part of the makeup of the energy component of the craft that ran through it like an electrical system, which was different than the others that I've seen when I've seen the inside structure. My father was an architect, so when I look at the specs of something, I look at the makeup of how something is and compare it to my own makeup. So there, in the round ones, I've noticed it is the design, their color, the speed, the direction of how they're flying within the grid, the geo design, the metric pattern. The material becomes incorporated within our dimension of where we are when it uses tone and color. And if, like, say, if it's prevented from coming into our dimension here, our area here on this planet, it can be stopped by a laser beam or whatever energy booms that we have currently in the makeup in the military can actually stop them or bring them down. And they have their own cloaking systems. All of those components make up how they enter. And what's interesting is that we already have the capacity in our own flight component makeup with a pilot who is set within his own plane and you can hook him up and have him fly from the thought pattern
Right.
into the makeup of our own crest. Well, they've always had that. I mean, you could see that as a kid. I mean, that's not, some require a head, like you have on a head component there in front of you. Many of them have it. Some of them don't even require it. They just touch the panel with their fingers, and that sensitivity goes through the whole system, and they fly the craft with just their thoughts or the touch of their fingers. And that's a makeup part of it. It's exciting to look at it, and I just find it exciting. I may not understand it all, but it sure is. It's exciting to see it.
Well, it sounds like we the human race are like millions of years behind these extraterrestrials in technology.
Not really. I think what's going to happen is that when disclosure becomes even broader in scope, I think, and the disclosure of what I believe is the secret space program, I really believe that people are going to understand that we really are farther ahead and farther along and farther out there than what we've been told and known. And I think that will open up. That's going to require a lot to accept within the paradigm changes, and is going to require a lot of anonymity and forgiveness for all of the programs that currently exist and have been going on for so long. And that's understandable. So now I understand better why disclosure has been trickling out for a longer period of time, because a lot of people have had to go in the background or pass on, because it's going to be hard to forgive abduction against one's will versus those of us who have had free contact. And it's going to be hard to forgive those who have been working with aliens that haven't been very beneficial for mankind. I think that's going to be very hard. It's been hard for me to understand, Dean, the darker side of this. We have on our planet, and I just want to say this shortly, because I want to talk only the good. I really want to leave with the good. But we have trafficking, cannibalism, slave trade, and they do too. And there are good people on this planet, and there are good E.T.s out there. And the majority want to, from what I've seen, of all the species, and I haven't met all of them, only some of them, and they range from the exotic to the unusual, to those who look like us, to huge praying mantis types that are just unbelievable to encounter. It's just, it is truly unbelievable. And but they're beautiful creatures made by a God that cares for every living thing in this universe. Sorry, I'm like
No,
I get a little,
it can get
little
emotional.
teary-eyed at it. Yeah, I do sometimes. I don't mean to, but it happens.
No, but you've probably answered most of my next question, because I mean, we hear about abductions where people are just traumatized, but I've spoken with you and I've spoken with Kevin Briggs and some other people during the summit, and they've had nothing but good experiences. So I started to wonder, are the bad abductions, are they actually aliens or are they actually us?
Some people believe they're both. Some people believe they're military and E.T.s. And believe it or not, I have spoken to scientists who are believers in God or believers in Christ even. They believe every encounter and every abduction is from the devil. So with that said, it's not an easy thing to always talk about, because I think it's all of it together. I don't think it's just one thing. I don't think it's just one side.
Do you get some sort of a inclination from the E.T.s, the good ones, about their thoughts about humanity, about where we're heading? I mean, we're probably living in a pretty powder keg type of world at the moment, where, you know, one push of a button and everything goes up in smoke. If something like that was about to happen, would they step in and stop it?
I believe they have at different times. I truly do. And that, now I'm not saying I have a real clear answer on this, but I'll give an illustration of my reasons for saying what I just did. One time aboard a craft, they showed me, when I asked, the grid pattern that was being broken up by the extensive use of us and others out there. They do not want nuclear explosions in space. And space-based weapons, and anything can be used for good, anything can be used for bad. But it breaks the grid, it breaks the threads of space, the fabric. And they were showing me one of the shuttles going up. And the shuttle was going up in this grid pattern, and parts were broken. And I said, what's happened? They were explaining that to me as the shuttle was ascending. And I was kind of asking in my own way about the appearance over all of the encounters that people have over nuclear sites and so forth. And it's as I understand it now, and I could be completely wrong about this, Dean, but my understanding is that time as we understand it is very different. I'm just going to leave it at that. And they have a way of stepping in and preventing. And the time signatures of where we might be exploding is something that they have a capability. So I'm just going to kind of leave it at that.
Yeah.
Without really going into depth, but you're right. They are concerned about where we are. They did show me things in the future when I was a child and I was to take care the best that I could on a specific time period. Without going into all of that, they are concerned about it and they do try to intervene, but people say there is a prime directive and there isn't a prime directive. I have found it's somewhere in between both of those truths.
Well, I've heard, I'm not sure. I think it might have been Dr. Stephen Greer was talking about the danger of nuclear explosions out in space and how it would affect the dimensional grid, and that's what they're really concerned about. Their ability then to get from A to B and move forward. Yes.
Their concern is just as much as ours. Ours down here, we have a lot of good people. I just watched a wonderful program, Leonardo DiCaprio. I had wanted to see this for some time, and it was a movie he did with National Geographic about the climate and changes. And here again, we need to stop the fighting about whether there's E.T.s or not E.T.s, or there's climate change or isn't. Just come together and take care of what needs to be taken care of. We are not the main cause of everything because it is cyclical, but we are also contributing to it. So we need to stop the fighting, and which is where I go when I'm speaking. I'm not there to debate the issue of whether UFOs or ETs are real or not. I'm there to just discuss my personal experience and see if anything relates to anyone. And go ahead.
As a person of faith, has your contact with the ETs strengthened or weakened it?
Strengthened it, particularly after what I shared with you, because I did not, in any way, shape, or form, throw a Bible or share the gospel with this entity who always referred to himself as the friendly one, always the friendly one. And but I did say a prayer that if there was a way for the God of this universe to share a Christ, to please do so. So that was quite wonderful. That strengthened my own personal faith. So the answer is yes, but it also gives you, and you know what, this has been proven in a lot of research. Kathleen and Denise Martin's research from the ERT, FREE's research with Ray Fernandez and all of the scientists involved with FREE, as well as those who have done other research. They asked this question: was your mind expanded? Did you grow socially? Did you have greater concern for your planet and the universe as a whole? Did you find yourself loving more? And the answer to that is yes. We encounter that when we encounter God or angelic forms, and we also encounter it with the E.T.s. So there is that similarity also, but I have not seen that similarity in terms of their dimensions and in terms of what they do and their hierarchy.
Okay. Um, you mentioned the secret space program a little earlier, and you had a sighting back in 2016 at Indian Rocks, and you say confirm your suspicions about that program. What were they?
This is my first time talking about that. I sent it privately in to the organization that my husband and I are currently field investigators again for, MUFON, Mutual UFO Network.
Mm-hmm.
Terry Lean Keel is our state director, and as you know, Jan Harzand is the executive director. And we are quite excited that we're going to be hosting one of the board members. We thank Terry. We have a board member coming in who will stay with us. Tom Whitmore is on that board for MUFON, and because he's coming into the UFO Con this weekend. And ask me again the space. Well,
Yeah,
okay. I guess I was reticent before.
it was something related to a
Well,
sighting you had back in
yes,
2016.
yes. My husband and I had been watching the Gaia program about cosmic disclosure, listening to the speakers that David Wilcock had been interviewing, and it's still going on. All of the speakers he's been interviewing. So I would write down whenever I heard them speak and say something that I could relate to, or that I said, yes, okay, I agree with that, and I've experienced that, or that confirmed something about in my life. So we were at the ocean, staying where we always did at Indian Rocks, and not being able to sleep because I felt that magnetic pull and that telepathic get up and get outside, Becky.
Wow.
And so I finally did. It was 12 o'clock and I finally did. And when I walked outside, there was a bright light, about a 45-degree angle up in the sky, and said, pay attention. It then left its position and zoomed out towards the ocean. So I walked out on the outside area, and the Orion constellation was as big as it could be over the ocean. And it was beautiful outside. And but I was shoeless and had my robe on. It was a little cool.
Mm-hmm.
So as I looked up, I began to see the things starting to decloak. I had the ability at that time, for whatever reason, and started picking up the comms or communication. And it was so busy, it was like a traffic jam. It was going around all the belt area and
Mm-hmm.
in the different quad sections, the quad areas of the constellation. The ships were so huge, I couldn't begin to calculate all of it. So I could remotely see who was aboard what, and then heard someone say, she can hear us, cut the comms. And then everything went dead. Everything became cloaked, and I just turned around and said, okay, well, all right. So I turned around and went back in and just went to sleep. I did write it down because it was my confirmation that all I heard then and all I'm still hearing now, that we do have a space program. So whether that was those were the good guys or not, they were having one heck of a traffic jam up there. and so I know I'm sounding like it's a joke, but
no,
that was I didn't know what to do at the time other than just send it in privately and say, if you can share this with someone, because I had no intention of reporting it. But I'm going to speak about it now.
Yeah.
All right. I'm not going to be afraid anymore, Dean.
Okay, well, we've got maybe a couple more things. I just wanted to go back to the military being present when we started off the interview. Were they concerned that, you were there or other people were there, were actually seeing what we get the impression they don't want us to see?
As a child, they were in this dimension, and you stepped through it, and I didn't realize it till years later. If you've ever seen, I'm giving an example now, something the closest I can come to. When I say step into dimension, it's like going through the, what's that Stargate television series they had, where they would show you
Stargate.
Through that crazy thing. All right, well, that's the closest that I can come to it. But the ET always had my hand, always walked through with me. Now, everyone was already there. There was a 2-star that was the most familiar one. He didn't like me too much, whatever his reason was. I don't know. So there wasn't anything about it. They were training with the E.T.s and vice versa and so forth. That's why I said the touch and goes. We have that here. That's what they're called in military training. So there wasn't a problem. In 1992, when there was another encounter, which was also verified years later for me by another family who saw it leaving my house. The encounter was they were training a military man how to fly this thing. So there was a surprise because he also had great telepathic abilities. And so outside of my home, when this occurred, up to 8:30, it was 8 o'clock or 8:30. I don't have my report in front of me. Excuse me for not being exact without my report. He was a little surprised, as were those, but there were several different species aboard this particular craft. And he was in training, as far as I know. The problem was not that I was aboard and the military didn't want me there. The problem was that I could see that he was reprimanded later for communicating with me and having me, as a result, being brought aboard. I can't go into the whole story. It's too long for that. But I did write that one up the best that I could. And the confirmation did happen years later, which is what we all look for in our lives. So I know if you don't have any more questions, what
No,
about
I've got one more question.
Okay.
How far off do you think disclosure is?
It's already happening.
It's already happening.
It's already happening, and it has been. The beautiful work of Hollywood, even if you don't like Hollywood, the beautiful work that they are doing in the films is good. But the bad part that they're doing in the films is the majority of them are looking like we have to fight them.
Right.
And that's what I'm concerned about. The good part is that they're showing and exposing people to technology and things that already exist and that were already out there, and that there are people that have all these kind of powers and so forth. But the bad part is that they're creating all these scenarios that every ET is bad and we have to fight them, when there already are fights out there going on. So I am concerned about false flags occurring, and I am concerned that disclosure is not happening from the highest ranks.
Right.
So I do pray that the president will be a part of that disclosure on a larger scale. I hope they will allow him to do so. They haven't done with the presidents in the past, but I do hope that he's a pretty strong fella, whether you like him or not. He's a pretty strong person, and I do hope that it will occur under his watch on a greater scale.
So do I. No, so do I, 100%. Well, Rebecca, we've run out of time. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting. I mean, I could go on for another hour or so, but we've got time constraints. But once again, thank you, and thank you for sharing your story and your information.
God bless you, Dean. I could hear you talk for hours.
Well, as I said, I've been in the States now for 13 years, and I'm in the South, and I've known a lot of Aussies that have lived in the South and lost their accents within 2 to 3 years, but I'm hanging on.
Hang on. You better hang on, Dean.
Okay, Rebecca, thank you.
Bye.
Rebecca Renfroe-Borneman joining us.